So back in 2020, I, Steven Shinder, started a podcast called Delayed Replay, recapping and reviewing the latest films. However, it got broadcast into an alternate universe, where those films got delayed and came out differently from how I was describing them. Because of how me and my guests had been describing the films, people in that other universe were saying that this was all an improvised comedy podcast, which, listening back, I can totally get why they believed that. A lot of weird stuff happened in that first year, and I even met my other self from that other universe, who pops in from time to time, for better or worse. And now, in the year 2023, this podcast continues, still recapping and reviewing movies and sometimes some other things that got delayed or canceled in that other universe. A new episode Saturdays every other week unless I decide otherwise for some special reason or whatever. You are listening to Delayed Replay, Season 4.
Hey everyone, just a quick note before the show. At the very end will be some thoughts on Across the Spider-Verse, the second film of the Spider-Verse film series, which just came out in that other universe where movies got delayed. So you'll hear thoughts from Steven of that universe and an email from Leana of that universe. But yeah, before that will be a review of Across the Spider-Verse Part 2, which is the third film in this universe, the Delayed Replay universe, where the movies didn't get delayed. And so the storyline is different. You won't need to worry about any spoilers for the Across the Spider-Verse of that other universe. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense, but if not, oh well. Okay, now back to Delayed Replay. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Delayed Replay, that podcast where we recap and review movies that got delayed in that other universe but came out on time in our universe. I'm your host, as always, Steven Shinder, talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 2. Yes. And joining me once again, you may have heard her on the Marvels episode last year. It is Leana Ahmed. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, we got a big movie to talk about, and this is like a lot happened in this movie, and
so much. I'm still digesting it.
Yeah, we have some thoughts, you know. But speaking of digesting, Burger King actually had like this Spider-Verse themed Whopper, and it's basically the same as a normal Whopper. They just dye the bread red. And...
Oh, yeah. It's so not appetizing. So imagine you go to a Burger King and they have those Beyond patties, right? They're the Beyond ones, not the other, like the non-meat ones. And then they serve it to you and it's blood red anyway.
Right.
That's where my brain went when I saw the commercials for that. That was crazy. Like, you just go to like In-N-Out and have a regular burger or something else. And you...
Yeah, like I don't mind the Beyond burger. Like I actually like the Beyond ones, but the Spider-Verse Whopper it's not that different from a normal Whopper. Like you could eat it blindfolded and you wouldn't know the difference. So it's
I just want to know what kind of so I can't eat that red dye because I have an allergy to it. I think I do. I know I have an allergy to other dyes. So I get nervous whenever I see something like that. So I personally have not eaten it.
Okay.
You've actually eaten it?
Yeah, I actually ate it.
Oh, yeah. And you're alive, so that's a good sign.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's probably not for everyone. You know, Burger King's not for everyone, you know, so.
I mean, I like their regular stuff, you know. Like, do they have to be all fancy? And did you get a toy with the food this time? I don't think anybody did, right? Nobody's offering Happy Meal kind of toys anymore.
Yeah, alas, I did not get a Spider-Verse toy, which would have been cool, but, you know, this isn't the 1990s, unfortunately.
I still have some of my toys from some of the McDonald's offerings, like the mugs for Batman and things like that.
Oh yeah, I think my family actually got one of those. For me, like the big thing that was so hype when I was like 4 or 5 years old was the Tarzan like jungle toy set from McDonald's, and that was like so hype back then.
Oh,
It was so
wow, I
cool.
forgot about that. Yeah, you would be the right age for that. Like that me was, I was basically trying to avoid having those parts, stepping on those parts in the middle of the night for my
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous toy set. But anyway, so let's talk about this movie.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing us back on track. Um, so I guess to start off, I mean, listeners of the podcast have already heard how I got into Marvel and Spider-Man. What's your history with the character?
Sure. So I have a longer history just because I'm just a little bit older than you.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I first started to get into Spider-Man in the late 70s, early 80s via the cartoons that aired and also the comics that were around and available to read at the time. I had a family friend who was like an older brother to me who had Fantastic Four comics, Spider-Man comics, and Silver Surfer comics. And I loved Spider-Man and Silver Surfer, and I just could not get into Fantastic Four. But being the older brother that he was to me, he would make me read the Fantastic Four before I could read the other two, which is why I've had a lifelong distaste for the Fantastic Four, as opposed to the Spider, as opposed to any Spider or Norrin Rad. So I love Silver Surfer. He's my favorite character. But that was my first taste, the cartoons, and also I was just talking to another friend of mine, based on what happens in some of the movie stuff. The Spider-Woman cartoon as well. She was a blip, like she just showed up, and I was like, oh my god, I could be a girl too, and then she disappeared. And I just thought it was really cool. And it wasn't until years later that I put two and two together and that, oh, yeah, she's a part of the comics world, too. I mean, we didn't have this information superhighway that fed us everything immediately, right? So you held on to an image of a person in this red costume and, you just thought, okay, yeah, she was just this one-off and you'll never see her again. And in our grocery store comic book section, she wasn't there. So years later, I realized who she was, Jessica Drew.
Yeah.
But that's my introduction and my lifelong love of Spider-Man.
For me, like my brother watched the 90s cartoon, and so I kind of caught glimpses of that. And when I watched that one later, I thought it was like honestly overrated. I
loved John Semper's take on Spider-Man from the 90s. It spoke to me, and I loved the dialogue more than anything else.
Like it's pretty good at showing how the comics look, but I feel like the pacing just felt like super frenetic. Like it'd go from one scene to the next like within a few seconds. It was really weird.
I mean, I wonder, if you're if you think about those as a comic book, just brought to life, it works for me. Like that's why I like, what's actually kind of what I liked about it. The very thing you don't like, Steven, is what I liked about it.
Okay.
So, and we had a lot of great characters that came out in other movies and in this one. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I loved the way it ended. It ended very beautifully, and I was really sad when it did end, actually.
Yeah, it did have a good ending. Unlike, unfortunately, Spectacular Spider-Man didn't have a proper ending. Like, it got canceled. Like, I thought that one was pretty good, but
it was getting there. Yeah, it was a good, a good start again. To see that character again. Because I guess what gets me is whenever they reintroduce, and I air quote reintroduce, characters like Spider-Man or even Batman or what have you, they always have to start with the origin, and it's almost like at some point in time these characters are no longer pop culture. They're just culture. They're just like any other religion. Like we don't talk about our
or Vulture, like the Spider-Man villain.
Right, exactly. A culture vulture. I mean, you don't talk about like Jesus and talk about his origin story every time. I mean, we celebrate it, but at the same time, we don't talk about it every time we talk about Jesus.
Right.
I think it's the same thing. These characters are as big as, in the mindset of kids and adults everywhere. We know the story, so you don't have to tell us again.
Yeah, like Spectacular was pretty good, but watching it somewhat recently, the reason it's not my number one Spider-Man cartoon that I've seen is that the love triangle, which becomes like a love square and then a love
right.
pentagon and
Why?
the six-side hexagon, like it just gets so annoying, like the relationships and it just gets annoying, but it had potential. My favorite of the Spider-Man cartoons I've seen is the 2017 one. It was sort of a back to basics approach after they did Ultimate Spider-Man, which kind of annoyed me at times, that one. But the 2017 one, I was really into it.
Which one was the 2017 one again, if you don't mind? Because I get them the year mixed up. Like for me, they all sort of run together except for my guy from the 80s. Everyone else, the 80s and 90s, I can keep separate. But everyone after that, except for the little kitty ones, kind of run together, and they trade off, right? Because you see that same Spider-Man potentially in the Secret Wars, Secret Invasion, or you see him in the New Avengers or something. You see him in different cartoons, and I'm like, wait, is that the same one from this one, or which universe are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think there was. I do remember Josh Keaton voiced Spectacular Spider-Man, and then he voiced him in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. But then
thank you. That's what I was trying to remember. Yeah.
But then was later redubbed with the Ultimate Spider-Man voice, which was pretty lame thing to do. But
yeah, that was lame.
But 2017 Spider-Man is like he goes to an academy for genius kids and whatever, and Harry is a big part, and eventually it adapts the Superior Spider-Man story.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that one too. It was pretty good.
It was a good adaptation of Superior. I even think it's superior to the Superior Spider-Man comics, but I might be in the minority there.
No, I could take it or leave it with Superior. So
it's such a weird idea that. But yeah, and I like the movies and whatnot, and Into the Spider-Verse like raised the bar super high, not just for animated Spider-Man, but for like superhero movies in general. Like you kind of.
I've said this before.
Yeah, like I think you know what I'm trying to ask you, so like go ahead and say it.
So I don't like live action superhero movies as much. And I mean, that's not a hot take. A lot of people don't. But the thing is, what I've always loved about animated and comic book stuff is the artwork, and just the fact that you could let your imagination run wild on the page or on the computer screen or what have you. With live action, it's great. But when Spider-Verse came out, I had tears in my eyes because it was so beautiful. And it's what I was missing all along from my superhero movies. We had of movies with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Spider-Verse just blew them all out of the water. Like I loved everything about it. I just loved the artwork of it, and I loved how they or incorporated the storylines that we were familiar with. And I liked the fact that Sony did a good faith effort after Backlash for tying it back into the MCU and everything else that we know and love about Marvel. But I mean, from a movie going experience, I watched this by myself next to two strangers, two grown men, by the way, and we both we all had tears in our eyes. We're like, it's so beautiful. We couldn't.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I get tears in my eyes during the Prowler unmasking,
yes.
Yeah, I think when I watched it, I'm pretty sure I already knew the reveal because Miles' because Miles' uncle appears in Homecoming, so I already knew that connection, and that was like the year before this came out.
Yep.
But the scene is just so excellently done. Like, to me, it's the most effective family reveal since Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. Like, the music is intense, and you see Miles tearing up because it's like the one family member he thought he could always trust is actually evil, and now he's trying to kill him, and like, it's just so good, that scene. I can't stop like talking it up. It's just so good, like, let alone like the whole movie, you know?
But it's something that I don't know. We'll have to talk about some of the reveals that happened in this version of this newer movie, and the artwork once again. I know, and I also am a tech geek, so from a technical perspective, I know that Sony pioneered a lot of techniques.
Yeah, and Into the Spider-Verse, how it conveys Miles' journey, it was just so incredible. And you know, you make a good point about how it looks more comic booky, and like the colors are more vibrant, and that's something that some of the live action Disney remakes lack, you know, like
that's so true.
Yeah, like occasionally there will be something I like the Jungle Book remake, but overall the live action versions don't have as vibrant colors, and it's like, who wants to see a version of this vibrantly animated movie in live action? Like, who actually says that they want that while they're watching the animated version and loving it, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you know, no offense to Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire and what's this Andrew Garfield, but I like those guys. That movie was also good, but at the same time, I know what I like, and I know why I like this art form to begin with, and it's an art form. And, you know, not to say that cinema isn't an art form, live action cinema isn't an art form in and of itself. I just prefer comics and art in my comic book movies more than I prefer humans. So.
Yeah. But what's cool though is because, you know, in Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, you know, the middle chapter of the trilogy that leads into this final chapter of the trilogy we're talking about, I guess. So much happened. Like, you know, there's a Moreland family, and there are like a bunch of different Spider-Men. And at the end of that one, those three Spider-Men that you mentioned, you know, Tom, Toby, and Andrew, like their versions got pulled into Miles's universe. So now
that was so cool to see that.
Yeah. So now they get to team up with this version of Miles and these other spider people who are with him. What'd you think of Part 1 just broadly? Like, I kind of thought it was messy, but what did you think of the middle part of the trilogy?
It has to be messy because the source material is messy in a good way.
Okay.
Like the source material, like the comics that these are derived from, are expansive, large, and, you know, everyone's got like 5 side quests to get to one middle quest that ultimately feeds the main quest, right? It's pretty large. And I was kind of happy to see that they pared it down. I mentioned Spider-Woman before, Jessica Drew, she was there, and that was great. And it was kind of a collapsing of the characters, right? So she's a clone, right, of Peter Parker, whereas before she had her own storyline in her own universe. And, you know, we saw some of the other, obviously you can't have this movie about Spider-Ham. That's just sad what happened to him. And
it was so surprising that he went out. Yeah.
I mean, did they have to do the luau? That's just ridiculous. Sorry. I mean, that was a joke that was made once, right? In one of the comics, I think, now that I think about it. But and, you know, I just thought it was kind of, because he's such a beloved character, right? You know, I think the throwaway line was like one of the Peter Parker or Miles or somebody who's like, I'm talking to a talking pig, and he's like, what are you thinking now? And Parker or somebody says, you know, luau. So that's why when you see in the background, it's not even something that they, you know, expressly say, but if you knew the comics, there was one of those little Easter eggs, like, oh my gosh, they really did the luau with Spider-Ham. Like, whoa, why would they do that?
Yeah.
It was dark. It was very dark. It was very funny, but also very dark.
Yeah. And they try to make up for his absence by throwing in, I guess they got permission from Disney since they own The Simpsons now, but they have like a version of Spider-Pig who has Spider-Man's powers. He has Spider-Pig from the Simpsons movie.
Yeah, that's the Disney, family thing. And,
Yeah.
You just know that at some point in time, there's going to be like a Jedi Spider-Man or something.
Yeah.
Just because that's what Disney's going to do. Disney's going to Disney.
Yeah. Crossover between Spidey and His Amazing Friends and Young Jedi Adventures 1.
Oh my gosh.
It's a similar animation style. I could totally see it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Trying to remember my favorite character from Young Jedi, because I did watch all of it. I loved it. Don't hate me.
No, yeah, I thought it was like enjoyable. Like I might not rank it super high, but I thought it was good for what it was. And I was surprised when one of the characters had two moms. I thought that was it kind of answered my question of that I never really asked of like, what does someone who has two parents of the same gender call each parent? And one is called mom, the other is mama, and there are other variations of that depending on the family. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting that they included that.
Yeah. I mean, I made a joke that Grogu, who I like, what's the blue character's name? Oh my gosh, I clicked on it.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
I'm gonna look him up. I
feel like there's a Z in there or something.
I want to call him Nubs, but that's not right.
I mean, that might be his name.
It's something like that. I'm looking it up too. Adventures.
Yeah, it is Nubs. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Who needs anything else when you've got a Nubs? And you just think about like the fact that Anakin killed Nubsy, or not. Well, these are way. Never mind. That he could have killed a newer version of Nubsy whenever.
Right. Yeah. If Nubs is like 250 years older or something.
Right, but I mean, like, it could be a long-lived species like Master Yoda, right? So
yeah.
But my thinking is that Anakin didn't kill our Nubsy from Young Jedi Adventures, but he probably killed an ancestor. I mean, a descendant.
Yeah, so. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think of how because, we got Tom, Andrew, and Toby, and since they're animated here, they're just providing the voices. They're able to do stunts that they themselves wouldn't have done. They would have had their stunt doubles. Like, what'd you think of how they were utilized in this one?
I think they could have been utilized more, but I understand why they weren't, because it's not their story, right? And so I appreciate the fact that they were underutilized in a tasteful way, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, they were there to help and assist the main story. They didn't take up space they weren't supposed to take up. Does that make sense? Like, they were there in a supporting role, and I love the fact that those guys, they're all Spider-Man fans themselves, and they probably all read the Spider-Verse comic series, so they probably are like, oh yeah, no, we're here for it, right? And I bet you a couple of them probably voiced some of the other spiders in the background. I kind of want to know who did the car spider, whose name I never remember. Remember, there was the car spider.
Oh yeah, Spider Car. Yeah.
Spider Car. It's literally just Spider Car. I don't know why I want to call him something else, but yeah, Spider Car.
Yeah. We also got Spider Unicorn. Like, I was kind of surprised to see that one.
I liked Spider Unicorn. That's actually one of my favorites out of this one. Like, why not?
Like, it shoots webs out of its horn.
Right. Because, it answers the question. You're like, let me guess. And it doesn't. I mean, it's cheesy, but I loved it.
Yeah. And you also got Spider Pegasus, which has like these web wing type things.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Honestly, the artwork on Spider Pegasus was amazing to me. Well, it's going back to what we said, like, instead of CGIing in something like that into one of the live actions, they were able to just let their imagination flow and let it work in this more animated cartoon, universe or so.
Yeah.
But
What'd you think of the voice actors they got for some of them?
I thought it was great. I didn't realize how many people had cameos. I mean, there's so many spiders, right? So
Yeah.
Who was your favorite cameo?
I don't know if it was my favorite cameo, but the guy who plays like the know-it-all kid in Polar Express, I'm blanking on his name. I'm gonna look it up right now, but he's the guy who's like, hey, I sound like this, that guy.
Oh, I forgot who that is. I mean, I know Bradley Cooper was there. I know Keanu Reeves had one.
Yeah.
I know
Eddie Deason is the name.
Don't remember Eddie Deason. Yeah, I'm not a Polar Express fan.
Yeah. Well, did you ever watch Dexter's Lab?
No.
Oh. Well, he basically plays like some characters who sound like a stereotypical nerd type of person.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's been in a bunch of things.
I like that Robin Wright was Pegasus, Spider Pegasus.
Yeah.
She was perfect choice for that. Like, you wanted somebody delicate, but that had that firm edge to their voice, and she's perfect for that. Then Spider Unicorn, was that Daniel Radcliffe?
Yeah, because there was like another spider unicorn, but this one like had lightning powers, and yeah, that one was Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah, that's right. And then Grint was the other. Well, I think they just sort of like, it was cute to see those two together again. There was no Hermione, but
right.
two bro unicorns hanging out. I mean, they were pretty good.
Yeah, and you also got Jack Black as Spider King, who,
of course,
looks suspiciously like the Burger King
mascot.
Right. So, he's got like the crown and the beard and everything. So
subtle product placement, you think?
Yeah, I mean, Burger King's doing the Spider Whopper promotion, so yeah, they just threw that in there.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm surprised they weren't all eating like burgers or shawarma thing, Yeah. I just kind of assumed that they would be, but they didn't. And I'm glad. I mean, it was, to your point, like, I thought the same thing too, because of the way, the Burger King's mustache is, and the way the Spider King's mustache was. I was like, oh, wow, that's like, that's really close. But then that was it. Like, it was just maybe a subtle nod to their advertising people, right? So I liked it. There was no overt product placement that like there could be. So
right. Although there was a moment where they're swinging through the city, and if you look closely in the background, you can see like the In-N-Out logo on a restaurant. So yeah, that was kind of weird.
Right, but was it an out and in, or was it in and out? I thought
it
was the opposite,
actually, yeah, because
it's the opposite world, right? So,
right, yeah, because I remember in Into the Spider-Verse they used a different name instead of FedEx, so yeah, maybe it was
FedR.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I wanted to remind myself that it was not in and out, and I said it anyway, but it was out and in. Yeah. Which does not make sense for, I mean, I guess with food, I guess you're out and you go inside, but I thought it was kind of a cute little nod to SoCal life. Then we also had the daughter, she's also one of the comic book characters too. Like, there's a couple of different daughters or kids that Spider-Man has, or Peter Parker has very specifically. Yeah. So I liked the fact that we got her back, right? MJ's daughter, because I mean, you find out that MJ died, right? So she's parentless at this point. And it was bittersweet, and they drew her pretty well as well. Like that whole scene was kind of emotional. And but that's where she gets her strength from, right? The fact that she doesn't have either of them, but they all taught her that they were her with great power comes great responsibility lesson, right? Because she
Yeah.
didn't have Uncle Ben. She had Spider-Man and MJ for a mom. Let's talk about some of the villains, because one of my favorite villains that I actually cosplay a feminine version of and the regular version of, the Spot, which is the silliest name, but the funnest villain. Oh my God. He's just basically nothing but holes.
Yeah.
Interdimensional holes, things just like travel through his body. And yeah, it's just fun to be that dude.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, in part one, it's mainly the Moreland family, but then Spot comes in here and it's like, oh, I want to see more of this character.
Yeah,
So,
and like the Moreland family, like I am blanking, they're the inheritors, if I'm not mistaken. That's actually their species' name or their race's name. I'm glad they didn't die out, because it would be weird if they did. I mean, we had other people from that species sort of still running things, so they're around, and I'm kind of jumping ahead to some of that end credit stuff, but Moreland himself and his dad, the Soulless,
yeah,
the
voiced by
Soulless.
the late great Kevin Conroy.
Yeah. I wonder how they're gonna do that, because Soulless is like the linchpin to everything. So I don't know if they're gonna stick to that. But he certainly was in the comics, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see if Soulless comes back. It seemed to be hinted at via a voice, which was the weird thing and sort of the sad thing, right? Because Kevin Conroy has such a distinct voice. And so when, I'm sorry I'm jumping ahead, but I just love Kevin Conroy so much that I would like to just honor the fact that they didn't have to show anything for that credit scene. It was at the very last one. If you didn't stay for it, sorry. But at the, like as the logo's going, you hear his voice one last time, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe they didn't kill off Soulless like I thought they did. Because I was kind of like, that was like one of my disappointments from the first one. Like, man, that's a pretty big bad to like just knock off that easily. So hopefully, I don't think you can kill Soulless, but.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, Kevin Conroy, what a voice actor, is Batman for a generation. And like when I read Batman comics, like his voice is the one I most often hear, so can't say enough good things about him. Yeah,
exactly. I just saw something recently about him on, what he did during 9/11 and like the days after the events of that, and how his voice, people didn't, like, somebody didn't believe him because they were kind of not looking at him face to face or whatever, and they heard his voice, they realized who he was, and then he told another group of people, they didn't believe him, and then he did some of the dialogue, and they're like, oh my God, you are, and people just started laughing and smiling more, and he said, that's kind of like you can tell he found immense joy in voicing iconic characters like that. So and this time he played a villain. So yeah, we'll see what happens next. So some of the other voices we went through, Bradley Cooper. We went through a couple of others.
Yeah. Oh, the one that surprised me was when Emma Stone played another version of Spider-Gwen, and like she talks to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Like, what'd you think of that scene?
That, unless you knew it was her, it wouldn't mean much, right? Like the deeper part of that. But to your point, like I didn't recognize that it was her right away, because I didn't. I stepped away from like trying to learn too much about it before I went in. But the voice sounded familiar. I was just like, interesting. But you're so like lost in the moments and everything else that's happening. I didn't stop and think about it until I saw the credits. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool and bittersweet.
Yeah.
and another one of those dark humor things that these writers keep putting into this movie set.
Yeah, because they have like a very brief interaction. Like they don't spend as much time with it as I would have liked them to. But it's kind of similar to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. There's a moment where, well, I'll put a timestamp if people want to skip over, but if you're a Marvel fan, you've probably already seen it, so I don't know why you have to do that. But like she says, I bet we were fun, and it's like, oh, they're using like the same line from Guardians 3. That's weird. There are so many cameos, and I mean that's not even to begin with the fact that they also brought in they also had Haley Steinfeld play Kate Bishop and Oscar Isaac play Moon Knight in this as well, in addition to their spider people characters. It's like, was that decision justified in this or not? Like, what do you think?
I liked it. I mean, okay, overall I liked it. I just like that dude, so I'll take what I can get. Why didn't you like it? I sense a hesitation with you on this.
I mean, to me, it kind of felt like they did it just because they had the voice actors already voicing Spider-Gwen and Spider-Man 2099. So they're just doing like the thing that I imagine happens in a lot of fanfics, which is like, oh, you sound like me. Oh, you sound like me. You know, that type of thing, which they did. And they even did the pointing thing from the meme again. So I don't know. It was kind of distracting. It's like, why did you need to bring them into this Spider-Verse movie? It's kind of weird.
I see your point there. Like, yeah, that doesn't, it was extra, but I was so hyped for the movie itself. I didn't mind that extra. Right. But to your point, now that I think about it, they weren't in this movie. So why did we have them in the other one to begin with? So, I know we had a little bit, there's that post-credit screen, but yeah, that's it. Why bother? And then I know there's kind of a little bit for Craven. If you're gonna want me to watch a Craven movie, okay, I don't think Craven is an interesting enough villain or character to have his own film, because he's not as well. He's from a story and a character perspective, absolutely he is. But unless you're a Spider person, like a Spider-Man fan, you're not gonna really care. Like the way the 90s series wrote him, like he was sort of an anti-hero, like he didn't do the things for pure evil. He was not pure evil, right?
Yeah, because in Craven's solo movie, he's kind of like an animal, right? Like an animal protector type person, and he thinks that Spider-Man is like gonna evolve into some giant spider creature that'll devour all of humanity. And so the setup is kind of here, like he's hunting those, Tom, Toby, and Andrew, but they like get rid of him real quick, like he's out of this universe or whatever. But then later on they see like a version of like a Spider-Man from another universe who did in fact like become a giant spider creature. And it's like, whoa, this is one of the big bad stuff.
It's like they had two, they wanted to do this comics of Spider-Verse, they wanted to do Craven, and they just basically threw a dart for both and said, let's just do them both. And I was expecting a tie-in between the two in this film, which didn't happen. And this is what kind of bothers me, to just shove him in just for a little bit and just to say, oh yeah. And meanwhile, this other guy is also hunting spiders, on his own. So you've got the Morlands hunting them because they have this belief that all the spider totems will, annihilating spider totems will help preserve their Earth, I believe, is the ultimate reason. And then Craven has his own reasons for hunting Spider-Man. And they could have been working in tandem or in symbiosis here, but I didn't see it enough. I mean, at all, honestly. It wasn't at all. It was
Yeah, and they also throw in Morbius just so he can fight Spider-Bat, and Vulture just so he can fight Spider-Vulture. And it's like, I feel like they don't know what to do with the villains they've been using in the live-action movies.
And I sincerely hope they don't fall into the Warner Brothers DC trap of like just regurgitating the same villains over and over again. Because what the best part of Marvel is the villains and the anti-heroes, just like Craven. Like I said, if you're not a fan, if you're a casual fan, you may not know who Craven is. But if you like it enough, just a little bit beyond casual, you're gonna know characters like Craven. And you'll know Morbius, unfortunately, now. But you're gonna know some of these characters, and unfortunately, like the live action versions don't give you the depth that the animated versions did. You felt
right, and there's only so much you can do in a film as opposed to a
exactly.
series.
Because remember, Morbius kept coming back in the 90s show, and as well, same with Craven, right? Because Peter was always just always laden with
Having
problems.
a bad day.
He's always having a bad day. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you and I have said that before about Peter. It's like he's always having a bad day. Like
Yeah.
a good day for Peter.
Yeah. I thought it was funny when if they reveal that there's a universe where J. Jonah Jameson became Spider-Man, and they have him voiced by J.K. Simmons and wearing the Spider-Man outfit.
That was great. That was so great. I love that. Thank you for that reminder. I couldn't remember. Like, I was trying to make a list of all the spiders before I got on here, but I was like, I have to watch the movie again with a notepad because there's and you have to freeze frame it because they're like, oh my God, there was the Spider-Man from India. There was the other nationalities of Spider-Man were also around too. If you paused it, or if you just kind of like froze on one section of the screen, you're like, hey, wait a minute, I know that spider. So there was all the different female spiders were there too. All the clones were there. We haven't even touched upon the spider clones.
Yeah. And some of them were voiced by D. Bradley Baker, who we know voiced some of the, pretty much all the clones in Star Wars.
He is all the clones. He just talks to himself.
Yeah, except Boba Fett and Omega. But
yeah. He basically did voice those as well. And then going back to, we talked about, there's so much to talk about just on the spiders alone, but I guess we should talk about the plot.
Yeah.
Did you like how it started? If you just divided into 3 parts, right? This sort of formulaic that way, but I think it needed to be, I guess.
Yeah, they kind of divide it in a way where, the first third is kind of dealing with fallout from the Morlands, and then the middle part is very Spot focused, and he's still there for the finale, but the finale has a lot more chaos with the giant spider creature that is trying to devour humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a bomb involved, the government is trying to use a bomb to get rid of it, but it's super dangerous. So all the spider people are there's got to be a better way to solve this. But there is levity throughout. There is that one scene where they're having some chocolate milk and using Ovaltine.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Which
it was with the Uncle Ben Spider-Man. Remember that one universe where Uncle Ben loses Peter and becomes the Spider-Man.
Yeah, that felt very Flashpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I liked. I don't know enough about him other than that's kind of what happens in some part of some of the comic at some point in time. There is a Ben Parker that became Spider-Man, and I loved that they it's Ovaltine is so much of his era, right?
Yeah.
So, the era for me to think about a spider, if somebody of his age would become, and the fact is that he just loved his Ovaltine and he was in that bunker with his Ovaltine.
Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah, I used to have it as a kid.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's great, but what bugs me is in Seinfeld, there's that episode where Jerry is, there's that annoying comedian guy, Banya, and
Banya's obsession with it.
Yeah, and Jerry is trying to give him some pointers, and so Jerry writes out a joke for him, where it's what's the deal with Ovaltine? The container is round, the mug is round, they should call it Round-tine. And then Bonnie is that's gold, Jerry, gold.
Gold, Jerry, yeah.
Yeah, my gripe with that joke is that ovals are already round. So the joke would be funnier if it's pointed out that those things are more circular as opposed to oval shape, and say it should be called Circle-tine. So
Circle-tine sounds better than round, whatever they said. Yeah.
Yeah, Round-tine.
Yeah, Circle-tine sounded funnier. You're right.
Yeah.
Geometry, wait, because you know how a square is a special case of a rectangle. God, I'm being super nerdy right now. Is an oval a special case of a circle, or a circle a special case of an oval? I think that's the opposite. I think a circle is a special. I'll stop. I'll go figure that out later.
No, but yeah, that. The Ovaltine was a nice bit in the movie, and There's also a part where they go through like the claymation universe, like they see Spider Clay and
remember
their
we
characters.
hinted that, like in the Doctor Strange movie too, like a brief hint of it when they splash through it, right? The claymation world.
Right.
And to me, if you think about it, when they splash through it in Doctor Strange, I was like, they just killed a bunch of people, didn't they? And then they keep going through, they don't like stop. And I was like, I think they killed people in the claymation world there, and but this time they didn't kill anybody, but I just thought it was kind of funny and adorable that they've stopped there for a little bit. And I loved the fact that it was Aardvark Studios that they used, so that the look and feel was that of Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, Aardman. Yeah,
Aardman. I said Aardvark, didn't I? I said Aardman.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aardman.
Had Arthur on the mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's actually like one spider we probably didn't see, but probably was there too, like an Arthur. Like
oh yeah, Spider-Vark.
Yeah, Spider-Vark. I'm sure. If they had their druthers, they probably would put one in there.
Yeah.
It's mainly, and for those that have not, or may not see the movie or saw it, I saw it twice. But even then, every time I watched it, in those scenes while they're in the world between the worlds and they're walking around, there's just so many spiders all around. But I do give credit to the artists and the producers and directors of this, that they honored all of them. You just have to find them. They're all there. All the spiders of that were ever made. I think that was kind of the point of this, was to show the diversity of the Spider-Verse, how big and expansive it could be, right? And how much they could keep this world going if they really wanted to. Like, I kind of wish it wasn't a movie, and I wish it was a series. But but it also was a series, it would take forever.
Right. Yeah, and it really shows how much you can do with each spider character. Like, you have a version where it's like they have the things that Spider would have, so they can paralyze someone, and it's like, that's a different way of approaching it, like fighting your foes. And yeah, it's just, there's like so many spider people in this movie, it's kind of overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is overwhelming. That's why, like, the first time through, I tried not to pay attention to it. I knew I was going to watch it a second time anyway, so I left that second time to just kind of pay more attention to the corners and the edges, if you will, of the story, so I could see who all was included and all those other like details. But at the same time, like I said, I could watch it a third time, kind of waiting for it to come on streaming, so I can like actually freeze frame and see who is in every scene.
So overall, how satisfied were you with Spot as a villain in this one?
He was not enough to carry everything. He's a great villain, but not a 90-minute, 100-minute villain, if that makes sense. He's good on the small screen, but on the big screen, I just think it sort of didn't work by himself. I'm glad that you still had hints at the Loom world and everything else, like the bigger part of the story was still there to guide it along. And so I know like some of my friends didn't like it, but I understand why they didn't like it, because they don't know enough about the full story. And even then, like, I've forgotten. I didn't read all of it, all the Spider-Verse. I read most of it, but not all of it. I know I missed a few things here and there and just kind of like went along with it. But there are a few facts that I do know, and I know that with Spot being like the main guy, he would not have worked had he not had an assistance from the other overarching villains of the entire trilogy, right? So I heard differently that they might break it up into like a quadrilogy or a cantos, but I didn't know if that was true or not.
Yeah, I don't know, because over in this universe, like, they call the second and third movie Across the Spider-Verse Parts 1 and 2.
Right.
Whereas in that other universe, I guess since they had more time to think about it because of the delays, they're like, you know what? Part 1 and Part 2 is stupid. Let's call the third one Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Right.
So I kind of wonder, like, if there is...
In my opinion, like, really? Beyond something, like, it's funny you said Beyond because we talked about Beyond Burgers, but
yeah.
It's just like Batman Beyond, or it's like it's always the word beyond always seems to get used.
Star Trek Beyond.
Exactly. Yeah, you read my brain. Like, yeah, it's always beyond is always the you might as well call it X, right?
Right, yeah.
Or dark or whatever. It's that one word that they seem to constantly use to talk about something.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's definitely an audience for more of this type of content. I'm just curious about whether it would keep on being films or if they would be willing to branch out into a series and where that type of series would land. It'll be interesting to see what the future of any of this spider media is, because they do put, Tom, Andrew, and Toby back in their own universes at the end of this. So we know that, Tom's got to continue his story in the MCU. And there might be like some changes and whatnot because of the multiverse and whatnot. And it's like, oh, how's that going to affect him? And how's it going to affect everyone? So there's a lot of different directions that all this could go.
Yeah, I like that it is fairly open to that, but I also, like I said, I kind of worry that the fine line between series and movie, right? How much of a plot can we have? I liked, like I said, the fact that Kevin Conroy's voice was brought back in to show that, hey, there's a bigger architect to all of this. It's not just, not just one spot guy. There's more to come, but at the same time, and I guess, now that I'm saying it out loud, maybe I do want 2 movies. Maybe I do want to see more of this universe on the big screen. And having said everything I said about the size of, small screen versus big screen, serialization versus movie, I loved watching this artwork unfold on that giant IMAX screen. That alone, totally worth the price. I am glad for the theater experience.
Yeah, I do think it got to a point where, we got Miles' story, but then by the time you get to this one, it feels like it's about all of the spiders and not necessarily focused on just one. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but the animation does look great. And there is a mandated universe building and whatnot. Like, toward the end, you get the cameo from Madam Web, who's made to look like Joan Lee once again, like in the 90s cartoon when they did that.
I love Madam Web. I have a friend of mine who I keep trying to convince her to cosplay her.
Yeah.
She's like the perfect build, stature, everything.
I
will.
Yeah, and there's like a little glimpse of the universe with Dakota Johnson, Madam Web, which that movie comes out in July in our universe. But it might be like a little bit longer before this podcast gets to that one. But yeah, just like little things like that where it feels like, I guess people kind of expected this to wrap up a trilogy neatly, but there's still like some little things where like other things are being set up, whether it be maybe a hint of like further animated stuff or just tie-ins to some of the live action things. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's kind of like, I look at the first movie as a part 1AB rather than a 1 and 2, and I look at this one as a 2, an actual 2, and I feel like there's going to be more after this in the cinematic version world of this. That's why I'm fairly confident that I just don't know how the live action and the animated worlds are going to blend. That's my one question, because they've hinted they've crossed over in and out, like we saw that with this one with the trio.
Yeah, or out and in.
Right. Like, how are they going to like go back and forth, right? And quite honestly, I just want to stay in the animated one. I like who they cast for everything, but at the same time, I would rather stay in the animated.
Yeah, like in that other universe, I think they keep them separate, whereas for us over here, it's like it feels like they're perhaps trying too hard to keep everything connected across different media.
Yeah. That could fail. But I wouldn't mind seeing a series based out of this multiverse that they showed us in animation here. I know the production costs or whatever must be crazy to produce this kind of show at that level for animation. But hopefully maybe in a year or two the price goes down and we kind of get to revisit it because hey, it's animated. You know, nobody has to be in front of the camera, so hopefully some of these voice actors can, you know, the ones that are alive can stick around and do voices. I almost said, you know, like Kevin Conroy, and I'm like, no, he's gone. So
Yeah.
I almost said something
Right.
positive.
And I also like how these types of stories, you know, live action or animated, can empower young people, and it's great to have that type of content. You know, like for example, you know, Marvel's Hero Project, you know, maybe keep that up. Don't take that away from Disney Plus, but
right.
Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, stories that speak to lots of different people of different walks or different parts of life and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I just want more in that universe, you know.
So is there anything else you want to bring up before we wrap up and give our scores on this one?
No, I think I'm good. I think I enjoyed talking. It's totally worth your time. It's there's a lot to be said about what happens next. I am looking forward to what happens next more than anything else. I liked this movie, but like I said, I know people think of this 1 and 2, and then this was 3, but to me it's 1A, 1B, 2. And then this feels like a middle movie to me. So
okay. Right. So then what would be your score out of 10, and do you know a measurement for that score?
I would give it an 8 out of 10. And the reason it's not a 10 out of 10 because you know not every movie is The Princess Bride or right. So but at the same time I just think that they could have focused a little bit more on maybe a certain subset of spiders because they showed us so many, and I was distracted by that a little bit. And I felt like I wish I knew more about that spider story, or like, oh yeah, I recognize that one. Maybe it's my ADHD coming out, but that's the reason I would give it an 8. But you know, from an artistic perspective, 11 out of 10. You know, freaking great to look. I could watch that movie a lot. I would give it 11 crowns, and then 8.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me it's a little bit lower. Like, well, the animation, I agree with your score there. Like, the animation is just so damn beautiful. Like, they went all out with this one. It's the best looking one so far of this Spider-Verse series of movies. But with the plot and just how it kind of feels overstuffed at times, I think I gotta go lower. So I think I'm giving this 7.25 out of 10 pieces of clay.
Oh, that's too funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I got the reference.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But this was fun. I hope to talk to you about the next iteration. Just so because I didn't want to look it up while I was talking to you, but the Madam Web movie comes out, or
Madam Web comes out in July. But yeah, I think I might do an episode on that one closer to when Venom 3 comes out of this autumn.
This one.
So, yeah. Yeah, they're doing so many damn movies, just one after another.
Oh my god. Too much.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so thanks for joining me, Leana. Is there anything you want to plug, like social media, like your cosplay stuff?
Yeah, so Sci-Fi Coalition Los Angeles, we are back up and running and doing events. So if you need charity cosplay for anybody that needs some cheering up, we are happy to provide a friend or two in superhero costume to come hang out. It's free. We don't charge anything for it. I also work with the West Coast Avengers Initiative here in Southern California. We also do the same work. We primarily focus on like bigger institutions like hospitals and things like that. Really appreciate the work there. And kids can cosplay also. The three main cosplay charity groups, I plug them all three. They're all three near and dear to my heart. And we all do great work, and we cover pretty much Ventura all the way down to San Diego County and Inland Empire, all the inner counties as well. So anytime you need somebody, just reach out to one of us on Instagram and we can help set something up. And it's what gives me joy, and I really do appreciate that. And then the other thing is, I guess, Star Trek related. The video finally came out, so I can talk about it. I got to talk to Mr. Burton, and the video itself, like, we spent a lot more time than what they showed, but feel free to look it up and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I'll link that in the show notes. And
okay.
Yeah, you already know my reaction. I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing! You're canon now," and just reminded of the Troy meeting LeVar Burton scene in Community.
All right. Yes. I had this brief flash in my head about that, and I was like, please don't do that. Please don't freeze up. But I mean, we were both crying. I will say that we cried a lot, like tears of just understanding and love and everything. But our conversation was a lot longer than what was shared. But it was beautiful, and I will cherish that moment. And no, I did not expect it at all. 1,000% thought I was speaking to a camera because I thought they were still filming or doing whatever they needed to do. No, because I know he lives in Texas. He doesn't live here, so was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, maybe we could have you back on here again to talk about the fourth Kelvin Star Trek movie.
Right.
Yeah, it comes out this summer in our universe. Yeah.
The summer's got a lot going on in it.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll figure that out at some point. I'll put my own plugs into the recording after I edit the episode.
Okay, so people can follow me at Steven Shinder on Instagram and Twitter, Steven Shinder Storytelling on Facebook, stevenshinder.com for book info. More news to come on that in the near future. And you can also see my Goodreads, Letterboxd, I'll link those in the show notes. You can email delayedreplaypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts on Burger King, I guess. I had the Spider-Verse themed sundae. It was okay. And there will be an email at the very end of the show, as you'll hear. And yeah, if I check out Yesshift, a vlog/podcast I do with my dad. And if I forget anything, I'll just put it in the show notes and you can check there. All right, back to the end of the episode.
But yeah, that'll do it. And next episode will be about the Haunted Mansion movie that came out in March for us. Yeah, I know it's a little while ago, but I'm circling back to it, Circle Teen, whatever. Yeah, so look forward to that in 2 weeks, listeners.
It's a nice arc.
Yeah. Right. And without further delay, have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, so this is Steven from that other universe, and I've been given the opportunity to read this email from Leana, also from my universe, the one where the second Spider-Verse film across the Spider-Verse just came out. So I'll go ahead and read her email now. It's not really spoilery, so I'll just go ahead and read it. I watched Across the Spider-Verse in 2 different formats, first in standard and then in IMAX. I love this movie so much, I may even watch it a 3rd time in the theater soon. Everyone should see this movie at least once. I don't say this often, but this movie deserves to be seen on an IMAX screen. I loved the first Spider-Verse movie so much, I cried tears at the end of it. It was just so beautiful, it hit on something I felt was missing from other blockbuster comic book-based movies. It was the art. Sony's take on the Spider-Verse returned to the comic art to these comic book movies. I anticipated much of the same with Across the Spider-Verse. This movie exceeded my expectations.
The movie stuck to the aesthetics of the original comic book art for each of the characters that it introduced. For instance, a lot of Gwen's story was drawn the same manner as Robbie Rodriguez did for the comics. The story sort of tracks to some of the comics upon which it is based. There are connections to the grander Marvel Universe. This will connect somehow to the other stories we've seen on the big and small screen related to the MCU. The ending is also a bit of a shocker and a cliffhanger. I simply cannot wait for the next movie to come out, and thankfully we don't have to wait too long for it. So yeah, thanks for the review of Across the Spider-Verse, Leana. And of course, the follow-up to that, Beyond the Spider-Verse, comes out in March of next year for us, I believe. Yeah, the date I see is March 29th, 2024. So about around there, around that weekend. Yeah, I get the sense that Leana maybe enjoyed Across the Spider-Verse a bit more than I did. Like, now, for me, it's still a 9 out of 10 movie. Well, 9 out of 10 spider webs or whatever. Uh, the first film, Into the Spider-Verse, is a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, favorite Spider-Man film overall, and then closely followed by Spider-Man 2, and then I might put Far From Home above that, and then Across the Spider-Verse. I guess I'm kind of an outlier for among some people, but yeah, I thought the story was really good. I like how it's as much. Yeah, I'm gonna give mild spoilers. Yeah, mild almost sounds like miles. Um, so if you wanna switch off, watch the movie, and then listen, then feel free. But yeah, I like that it's as much a Gwen Stacy story as it is a Miles Morales story. I think that really benefits it, and we get more of Miles's mom. She has more of a role in this one. There were a lot of different versions of Spider-Man, and there were a few cameos, and well, archive stuff, and a familiar face I didn't expect. Like I didn't expect to see more than just the animation we're used to. I think I'll keep it under wraps just in case, but when you see the moment, you'll know what I mean. But yeah, it was cool, but I kind of feel like the novelty of some of that, cameos nostalgia has kind of worn off. Um, I still put this above No Way Home, which I still really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed this as well, but stuff like that is kind of old hat, cameos, Easter eggs, and I know that that's not all that the movie is, but I don't know, like it's just I didn't get as emotional over this one as I did with Into the Spider-Verse, and since it's also a part one of two type of movie, I tend to rank those a bit lower, sometimes a lot lower, as was the case with Deathly Hallows Part 1, uh, Dead Man's Chest, sort of. Back to the Future Part 2 I still enjoy, but it's like my least favorite of that trilogy. Like it's still an 8 out of 10 probably, but yeah, it's my least favorite Back to the Future movie because some of it is set up. But there are exceptions to the rule. Like Evil Dead 2 is really good. Empire Strikes Back, of course, is a masterpiece. I feel like those do a great job of still standing on their own despite ending on cliffhangers. Whereas some of these other part one of two type of movies feel like a lot of setup that will be resolved in the follow up, the part two, which is actually tends to be the third movie. So, yeah, I know I feel kind of like an a-hole whenever I say, oh, it's great, but it's not that great. But yeah, I feel like people get what I'm saying. Like, it's still a fantastic, spectacular movie, but I don't rank it as high as Into the Spider-Verse, and I'm curious about whether my rating could rise or go down slightly. maybe Beyond the Spider-Verse will make me see things differently once I have a bit more context of the direction. Um, and I'm curious where Beyond will rank. It's hard to imagine it topping Into the Spider-Verse because that was like the first time we were thrown into this type of thing, but I'm still excited. I think this will be a fun trilogy overall. At least that's my hope. And I like what they're doing with representation and also the different animation styles. Like I think they're still doing a great job in the animation side of things. And yeah, I'm curious to see whether they'll cap it off at 3 movies or if they could go beyond that. See what I did there? So yeah, those are my thoughts on Across the Spider-Verse. I enjoyed it. I'm glad Leana enjoyed it, and lots of people I know are enjoying it as well. Like I've pretty much only seen positive comments. But yeah, that'll do it. Without further delay, have a good day.